everybody. How you doing out there? Welcome to AWS Security Live. It is your show, our show that comes to you live every other Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific. Rob will help me convert that to GMT and CT.
We're in the twilight zone. We're in the twilight zone, so we haven't changed our clocks yet. So at least in the UK, it's currently 3 o'clock. It should be 4 o'clock if you're in France and Germany, etc. But yeah, we're in that twilight zone. Nobody really knows what time it should be between all time zones.
But somehow we just power through, Rob. We power through, my man.
We've had coffee. We're all right.
Yes. Oh, I wish I had a cup of coffee. That's usually the thing. But anyways, folks, we are here today. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ryan Orsi. At AWS, I run a team of go-to-market specialists in cybersecurity. And it just means I get to have a lot of fun with AWS partners and customers all around the world. Today, I'm dialing in from San Francisco, California at the RSA Security Conference. And we'd love to know where you're watching from, folks. But before we get to the rest of the show, Rob, hello, sir. You're here. Thank you so much for hosting with us here.
I am. So our unlucky audience gets me for two episodes in a row.
You're a treat. Come on.
So Rob Hale, for those who don't know me, Rob Hale, I lead AWS's security partner business across EMEA. So I've been at AWS for 9 years and around 28 years in security. So I help our partners, ISVs, consulting partners, and MSSPs to create solutions that solve for our customers' security use cases. So as always, it's a pleasure to be here.
And we get into some pretty interesting topics, folks, throughout the episodes. You have some of the industry's biggest names and deepest thinkers in the cybersecurity industry. Don't forget that. So the chat is open. Feel free to ask questions as we go. Rob and I, we're great at multitasking. We work at AWS. So what do? We use AI, we multitask. So we'll be scanning, looking for your comments, and we'll bring them up. And speaking of, great AWS partners that we get to work with and get into some really interesting topics, I believe we have Nick from Salt Security. Are you back there, sir?
I am. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Rob. How are you?
Hey, Nick. Great to have you.
Nick, welcome to Security Live. Welcome back, I think, to Security Live. Yes.
In time. I did not burn my welcome the first time, so I appreciate you guys.
You didn't burn the producer too often on the acronym police.
No, we'll try to be good with that today.
I wonder if they never will admit this to us, but I wonder if our production team keep a secret tally of acronyms, because I'm probably pretty high up there in terms of.
I mean, if you had to sit and listen to us from behind the production desk, you probably would do all sorts of crazy fun stuff, right? It's like going on a road trip as a child with your family. If you're going to think of creative things to do.
Yes.
Hey, Nick, well, for those that maybe are just getting to know you and Salt Security, do you mind giving us a little background on yourself and the company?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that, Ryan. Hi again, folks. My name is Nick Rago. I'm VP of Product Strategy here for Salt Security. For those that aren't familiar with Salt Security, Salt's an agentic security company, really help organizations govern and secure what I would argue is the hardest part of AI security today. That's the AI action layer. And that really is protecting, governing, securing the APIs, application protocol interfaces, MCPs, model context protocol, servers, tools, skills, data that AI agents rely on to function at runtime. We actually started in the API security space where we've been a pioneer, and that's been today. It's even more relevant than ever in the AI space, because APIs essentially now are the backbone, the nervous system of how agents operate today. So as AI moves from, I'd say answering questions at inference stage into actually taking action, the risk really shifts into a lot of those API driven systems. So that's exactly where we're focused today. So really excited to be able to talk to you folks about it today.
Great to have you here, and that's one of the things that when I first started to talk to the folks at Salt was really cool. Was you were looking at API security, which is an area that was pretty specialized in terms of those organizations that were looking at application security and the APIs behind it, and the whole increasing use of Agentic has magnified that as a security priority. So tell us a little bit more about that. Why is API security so important when you're looking at Agentic and the Agentic fabric?
Well, I think we were, I don't want to say in the right place at the right time. I'll say we had the foresight almost a decade ago that we knew this was happening and this wave was going to be coming. But we focused on API security for almost a decade. And if you kind of think of, sort of APIs and, this whole idea of how we had sort of the mobile app transformation where organizations were building mobile apps, APIs were kind of exploding all over the place. Then we went through a digital transformation phase and we're bursting everything into microservices and, how do we secure that? How do we govern that and put our whole hands around that? And now we're seeing APIs and all of those microservices and that infrastructure is essentially become the nervous system to AI agents and their ability to take action. So I think one of the big things, Rob, that's changed, I would say when we talk about AI security last year, going into this year and kind of looking beyond into the next 36 months, I always tell people it's really now about moving your focus from a security standpoint or extending your focus beyond what the agent is hearing and what it's saying to what the agent is actually doing. So it's not just about what the agent's coming out of the agent's mouth. It's what it's actually doing behind the scenes. And we're going to be talking probably the next time I'm on here talking to you folks about A2A and the cascading effects of agents and what that looks like. But behind the scenes, that whole nervous system that's connecting everything is all API driven. So for us, obviously, it was a natural extension for us to move the platform in that direction. And quite honestly, that is the majority of asks of us today, people calling up and talking about API security, but through the eyes or through the lens of a lot of the AI or agentic programs that are in place and a lot of the customers that we support today.
Nice. Hey, Nick, rewinding API security before agents. What is that? The time period BA, not British Airways, Rob, yeah. But before agents, API security.
Hang on, hold on. We have to just. Did we just create another acronym?
We did. Right here. What day is it? March 24th, 2026. We have coined another acronym. It's our favorite thing to do in the security industry and then at Amazon. I mean, come on, we're all about it. Talk to us. I'm curious, right? There's something in the security realm of attack surface, and we'll do an attack map, right? We'll do a mapping exercise of how a bad actor could compromise something, intercept something, manipulate something to get to their ultimate goal of maybe data exfiltration or escalating privileges and getting further into a system. When it's API security alone, what are some of those top ways that bad actors are manipulating or trying to compromise APIs, the API endpoint in particular? And then does that translate into the world of agents, or does it morph? I'm curious, from the attacker's perspective, we know all about sort of what they're trying to do with poisoning training data, with prompt injection, with getting models to hallucinate, to produce some different kind of output. But from an API layer perspective, I'm curious what translated from the old days of so 12 months ago, right, to today with API security.
A lot of pretty much everything that was of concern before is still a concern today, but now we have some new wrinkles associated with it and new behaviors that we have to look for. I always joke and say in the security space, we love to learn the hard way, and so, where I came from, so developer, by trade. So I've always had a love-hate relationship with security. Ended up spending most of my career in security, working for security companies. But, the interesting thing, I worked in a lot of, I was one of the first people at one of the major API gateway companies. I guess I can say it's Kong, that folks are familiar with today. So worked in a lot of the large digital transformation projects all around North America, and got to see a lot, and which has actually prompted me to get over here to Salt to say, you know what, we're kind of we're building some amazing stuff, but security seems to be not in the forefront of people's mind while we're doing this in a lot of companies. I think that the big thing that a lot of organizations did, first mistake was only securing what was on the edge. And I think one of the big things that change is you can't do that in this new agentic world, right? Your API consumer is no longer the person that is on their mobile application or the adversary that's outside, right? The agent is actually already inside your walls, and that becomes now the number one API consumer inside your enterprise. So that is a fundamental shift where we're just gonna, we're gonna have the castle and the moat and the drawbridge and put everything behind the drawbridge and in front of it and protect it, right? Completely changes the game there. And I think the other interesting thing is that we run into in security, we like to protect, against signatures and patterns and kind of the known bad. You can't do that really well with APIs, right? Every API has its own story to tell in terms of the business logic associated with it and what it does. And really good attackers will go after business logic, right? They will try to find, the twists and turns just enough to induce some type of negative behavior. So to your point, Ryan, whether it be data exfiltration, whether it be getting privileged access to a system or creating some type of cascading effect. And like I mentioned before, the attack surface is no longer just on the outside. I tell everybody, if you believe in zero trust, which conversation for another day, I will never understand to this day how zero trust principles got thrown out the door with APIs. A lot of organizations just really relegated to
or in the frenzy of agent to agent communications.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's been that's been I think a big awakening for a lot of enterprises, realizing that, wow, we have so much riding on, the board is telling us we have to move down this AI path and we have to do it quick to stay competitors, to keep our prices, stock prices where they need to be in this really fast moving world. And they're coming to the realization that, but this back end infrastructure, this action layer, if you will, is right now built on a house of cards from a governance standpoint. And I think that is the big change. It's that people taking a step back and organizations saying, well, wait a second, we still have a lot of housekeeping to do if we really want to put, our foot to the metal. And I'll say one other thing before we move on. In all my years doing this, from what I've seen in the last quarter or two, this is going to dwarf the amount of attack surface that we saw created during the mobile transformation and the digital transformation ages.
Right.
Just how quick the services that are supporting this nervous system for these agents and these agentic workflows are being created right now, right? What used to take developers weeks to develop is taking them minutes, and it's being spun out quickly. So it's wild.
The value to the user is so high, right, Nick and Rob? Like the output of what an agentic system can produce for you as an individual in your daily jobs or your personal life is so high that people are willing to go move a bit faster than they did in the past.
Yeah. And that's one of the accelerators, and it's a bit of a paradox. So if you were a pretty mature organization in terms of security, you probably had an AppSec team. We have an AppSec team. They probably are working quite hard to understand how their applications should be working. They're doing threat modeling. They're understanding the API and the API behavior. But now they had should have a pretty set application security testing and governance procedure. Now we have potentially democratized, if you like, agent creation across the organization. So everybody is creating their own apps. Everyone wants to be more productive and to have agents make their life easier. So now you have to understand, well, actually, how are all these agents going to work? How can we put some governance around them that not only secures what they're doing and make sure they're compliant, but also does that at scale? So we can make sure that people are productive, but we're still reducing or controlling risk.
And Rob, and add to it, it is so easy to create agents today. I think one of the wonderful things that AWS did was make it so easy to create agents. And I think, the good and bad with that. I think you folks know what that is, right?
With great power comes great responsibility. That's the whole story of cybersecurity. And hey, Nick, actually, I just wanted to bring up, there was another good comment, I think, coming from Jim Huddleston 4167 about just unintentional data sharing between agents. And of course, that data sharing, it doesn't just happen automatically. It's using API-based communications, where I'm sure your solution with Salt Security is centered on. Any feedback for us on unintentional data sharing when an agent, they're the best friend, they're like man, woman's best friend trying to do a good job, and they may grab some data if they're not given proper guardrails to give it to another agent to go produce the desired output. But maybe that data is credit card records or healthcare information, and it's personal and it's sensitive. Have you crossed that bridge there at Salt Security?
Yeah, and it's what we're doing is we're having organizations kind of look at the bigger picture of the problem. I think what people in a lot of organizations or security folks have been doing for this first wave of AI security has been all around guardrails, right? And putting policies around, like I said, the ears and the mouth of the agent from a data security standpoint. Now we have this extended action layer, right? Where the agent it's not just what the LLM is trained on anymore and what could it say about its training and the data it has access to, but we had RAG pipelines, and then we had MCP, model context protocol servers, making it easy for agents to take action. So the big problem is what data buttons and levers can the agent push, autonomously when it infers that it should do that. So one of the things that I personally spend a lot of time with CISOs and organizations looking at is, what about all of the upstream and downstream connectivity that the agent has, right? Should it have access to an MCP tool that can pull, PCI data or customer data? Should the microservice be connected to that MCP server? Should a tool or skill an agent have access to that data? So that is one of the other big pieces. It's not just a matter of putting those safeguards in place around, what the agent hears and says, but what does the whole agentic infrastructure, this action layer, actually do? And I think we're already seeing from a regulatory standpoint, a lot of things change very quickly. And, the anticipation is all of those moving parts and moving pieces from a data in motion standpoint, there's going to be a lot of regulatory requirements around that. There already is, but even more so explicitly calling out these technologies.
I'm sure Rob in Europe knows a thing or two there.
We have an increasing number of regulations. We see that in other areas as well, in Asia Pacific as well. There's a lot of data regulations. I think we'll see that increasing. But I think one of the main lessons that organizations are learning is that you can't just buy a tool to secure agents or AI. You need to start with the foundations, and one of those foundations is data security and data privacy. So what's in your training data? You mentioned PII and PCI data. That sort of stuff shouldn't be in your training data, because if you have that in there and you have a model that's going to potentially leak that information, that's a real challenge.
And I think, Rob, that was one of the big pieces before. It was what's the supply chain on the data and how we train the model. But the dependency of the model being trained right now is much less than it was a year ago right now, because the agents have the ability to access data through tool skills, MCP interfacing, all on its own. And so that's really changed the game. And go ahead. Sorry.
So how do you see, with that in mind, and we could, continue kind of a bit of a doom scroll around this in terms of, all the things we need to look at. So, some customers are doing this in a very prescriptive way. And so what's your experience, or what's your advice to customers who are, particularly security teams, who are looking to enable the business to use agents, but do so in a way that doesn't expose them to more risk?
Yeah, first is just the realization that the problem is bigger than, like I said, the surface area of the agent. And actually, if I can bring something on the screen here and just to illustrate it to you folks.
All right, let's get into it.
This is an exercise I literally walk through with CISOs and security teams, or these new AI committees that a lot of organizations are forming to figure out how do we tackle the governance and security around AI. Is sit with them and we'll say, okay, what are you building? And this is just an example of a bank agent here. And much of the security, and Rob, you had mentioned it already, it's how do we train this? What's the model? How did the model get its data? What was that supply chain? Do we trust, do we trust every element when we built this agent and the orchestrator? And the first thing that a lot of organizations do is they'll put the guardrails in place. And this is a pretty simple one, right? Where we're saying, hey, how much money's in my savings account? System comes back and says, you have 10,000 in your savings account, right? From a guardrail perspective, there was no issues here. There was no problems found in the prompt or in the response. Let's move on. What we're saying in our focus is that also is important, but what is very, very important is to look beyond that, because underneath this agent, there's going to be a lot of moving parts. There's going to be the internal MCP server, right? This gives access to tools and data on demand, right? That through the agent when it infers that it needs access to do something or get access to data. So there'll be MCP servers and then the API fabric underneath that. There's now a major dependency with third-party MCPs as well. So an agent not only is talking internally, but what if that agent needs to get data from, let's say, a data warehouse inside of a Databricks? Or there are services published through, Bedrock Agent Core, and there's connectivity to an MCP interface that way. Or like you saw with Anthropic and OpenAI when they released skills and tools capabilities in the agents over the last year. What if I just go directly to APIs from the agent itself, and the agent itself knows about these tools and has embedded tools and skills that can access APIs and microservices directly? So from our standpoint, there is this big giant attack surface that's created just based on the simple prompt. How much money do I have in my savings account? And the risk is here and here and here and here and here.
Oh, Nick, it's getting awfully red on this picture.
So, Robert, it really is first the realization that the problem is bigger than what you see on the surface. We foundationally have to make sure that if all of these technologies in play, this is all attack surface, right? So someone gets in the walls, or someone, we saw with a pretty public breach just recently, where API, where agentic infrastructure for an AI agent, some backend services were exposed externally, right?
Yeah,
just a simple governance and oversight like that. So that is the big realization that we do with organizations first is, okay, how are we going to secure all this? How are you going to handle this?
Well, you know what's kind of calming me down here, Nick? The red, if you look at each one of these permissions, right? Well, that's identity and access management. In other words, it's a known security principle. There are known, identity, security, privileged access management style tools that can get you that we use today. If this was a application we're looking at and not an example of an agent, we would all look at this and say, okay, yeah, know the security tool to enforce that policy for least privilege access, and I know the other security tool to monitor my data warehouse and my storage locations for sensitive data and make sure it doesn't leak out. So we actually, like as security professionals, when I look at this mapping, you're definitely right. You see the red in different places than they normally would be if the architecture was just a web application. In an agent, it's magnified, and then you could zoom this little thing in and see like the Big Bang galaxy explosion, right? You could see this is a multi-agent system. You would see so many of these sort of red rings going around. But what calms me down, maybe you let me know, and Rob, let me know too if this is off base, but I feel like it's existing security principles applied to a new architecture.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it's that foundational piece. So one of the big things is you can't just, and I'm sure Nick will agree with this as well. You can't just buy a solution to go and fix security around AI or agentic. It's an absolutely critical part of the puzzle in terms of model security and agent security. But you need to address the foundational security that underlies everything. So what's your data? Where is it? Who has access to it? And under what conditions? Are you able to spot and mitigate threats? Is that data encrypted? A permission set? You mentioned zero trust earlier, and that's absolutely critical in terms of agent security as well, both from the foundational infrastructure, but also the agent itself. So you might just, the temptation has always been, give the agent access to everything. And everyone from a security perspective is going to be shouting, no, don't do that. That's not going to have a good outcome if you can get the model or the agent to do something unintended. You can launch an attack around privileges, or you can even get a rogue agent, which isn't doing stuff that it should be doing. It's going and doing something else. All of those introduce more risks, but you can mitigate a lot of those risks with the right foundational controls, which is having that in a scalable mechanism.
And yeah, you're both exactly right. And then Ryan, you kind of preach something that I've been preaching a while, is that you know how to fix all of these, right? You know how to put a rate limit on your AI and API gateway. You've done it a million times for your mobile applications. the car's moving really fast right now, and it's shaking. and we're kind of just, oh wow, I didn't know. Yes, an MCP server works, and that skill works great, perfect. Plug it in, and that's what's happening in a lot of organizations. So I would be remiss if I didn't throw 2 new acronyms at you today. So I'm going to do that.
Everybody get ready. Hold on, drum roll.
In terms of what we're bringing, to the market is, we've heard a lot about AI and AI SPM, and what we're really bringing to the market right now and helping organizations get their arms around what we're calling AGSPM, which is Agentic Security Posture Management, and that is a really, really big piece of this. Is just being able to understand not just the upper level of the model itself, is the ability to understand the security posture associated with everything on the agentic layer. And then AGDR.
The agent, it can access basically all the things that it's wired up to.
Exactly right. And then AGDR, which is agentic detection and response, right? Is that runtime piece on below. What if an adversary got access to an MCP server? What if they tricked the agent to do things on one of the backend components, like you said, Rob, that wasn't intended or designed to do before?
I was going to say we're starting to see MCP servers that are imposters. They're like an evil honeypot. What is that? An ePod or whatnot? But they're advertising capabilities that developers building agents would love to add to their agent to amplify it. It's an impact, but it's actually fake, and it's hooked into like command and control connections. So I imagine, Nick, you also have threat intelligence and kind of a pattern of bad actors out there in the wild that you keep track of, and that's part of the SALT solution. I'm just putting words in your mouth, but I know from being part.
No, absolutely. I mean, like I said, because every interface has a story of its own. Behaviorally, we model everything individually and uniquely to every client, but there are certain patterns of bad actors and bad behaviors. Our claim to fame has always been regarding not just anomaly detection. Most technologies that, even though they're very, very good at detecting behavioral anomalies, 0.02% of behavioral anomalies are malicious. So the real power in what we build is the malicious intent detection. And it's one of the ingredients, like you said, Rob, and now to do it across this large scale. And if I could just show you one more picture, because I think this is the one that resonates with people the most right now, especially CISOs, is how do I build, I know all these components live in my environment, but how do I map the relationship between the front of my agents, this whole action layer of MCPs, skills, tools, third-party dependencies, and all of my backend API fabric and infrastructure behind the scenes that's supporting it? When a prompt comes in, what does it actually light up, and what's the associated risk with all of the connected nervous tissue connected to that prompt? And that is missing right now. And this has been a big focus of ours at Salt Security. And like I mentioned before, almost 10 years focused on API security as the nervous system. We were built to draw this out for organizations. So this is so we're really privileged and happy to have the opportunity to help organizations get their arms around this.
Well, and you're going to help people go faster with this kind of visibility. That's the thing. When security, we all know how to solve each security issue in isolation and under more traditional architectures. But when it's agentic, architecture is more expansive and the pace of innovation is faster. Your developers don't want to wait for you to go figure out the security issues, right? The board doesn't want you to wait for that either. Everyone wants you to go fast.
Yeah. I love the visibility of that as well is really, really cool, because one of the things that a security leader, one of our customers, told me was you have to treat agents like digital toddlers. So they've got all the tools, they've got all the crayons, so you need to control and put tight guardrails around what they can actually do with those crayons. And so having visibility into it and the ability to act is critical to be able to.
Yeah, I'm going to steal that, Rob. I think I like to use the new digital employee, but I actually like toddler much better. So I'm trying to lift that from you.
I love it. Well done.
I can't claim to have invented that. Yeah. It was some sound advice from a CISO at customer.
Hey, folks, if you've been looking on the screen, the QR code is there. It's also in the chat. Don't forget to get your free agentic assessment from Salt Security. Nick, we're just about out of time. It's been a pleasure, man. But before you go, you got to give the audience your opinion. Dissolvable mints like Mentos and Altoids, or chewing gum? What's the preference?
Oh, my bag is filled with dissolvable mints all day long. I have the 30-minute mints, and I tried convincing someone, if you want 90 minutes of fresh breath,
Right?
3 of the 30 minutes.
I don't want to deal with having to find, the gum.
At one time.
Yeah. All right. Nick from Salt Security, thank you so much, sir, for being with us. Folks, Rob and I will be right back for the next segment of Security Live.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, probably good evening somewhere. Welcome to AWS Security Live. My name's Rob Hale. I'm one of your hosts. We are a bi-weekly podcast show. If you're tuning in for the first time, we talk about all sorts of security topics, obviously involving the cloud, with every week a new guest from one of our partners or a security leader. So as always, I'm not on my own. I'm joined by an awesome co-host. Hey, Ryan.
Hello, Rob. Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Orsi. I get to have a lot of fun every day, sometimes Saturdays and Sundays, but mostly Monday through Friday with AWS partners and customers out there. I've got a team of go-to-market specialists focused on security, and we get to look into new technologies. We think about how to bring that to market. We get feedback from everyone, all the customers and prospects out there that are using these things. And we'd love to bring what we can to this show, Rob, in terms of feedback and what we're hearing and seeing. And hopefully, it's a team sport. This security thing is what I've been hearing more and more. And we are all here to talk, to share stories, and to learn from each other. So
absolutely. You're where are you at the moment? Because you're not in you might be in Southern California, but you're not in your normal.
Oh yeah, you can tell this is suspicious. Whatever that blurred out looking header is, that is a gorgeous wallpaper over my hotel room. And I'm in the I'm actually at the RSA Security Conference in San Francisco. Maybe some of you are there, or you'll probably bump into you live around the streets of San Francisco or the Moscone Center.
Awesome. Will you have a really recognizable hat or something, just in case, so everyone can recognize it?
This shirt has my last name on it. You can't miss me.
Awesome. I love it. Guys, if you're at RSA, if you're in San Francisco, wherever you are in the world, do pop a comment in the comment section. We are live. We do read them, and if you have any questions for us or our guest as well, please do pop a question in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer. So, as ever, we're not alone. So before Ryan has to go and do the tour around RSA, who have we got?
I think we have Lahav from AllCloud. Lahav, are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here waiting for you. I mean, I love the conversation before, actually. I mean, a very good context for our conversation.
Hey, that's what's kind of fun about going the second half of the segment, right, Lahav? You kind of
I was carefully listening to the previous one,
Yeah. Well, sir, welcome to Security Live. Maybe for those that are just getting to know you, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself and AllCloud, the company, see what the latest greatest is over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you for having me again. I mean, a pleasure to be here on this session for a couple of times already. So I'm Lahav Savir. I'm the CTO of AllCloud. I've been with the company from the very first day I started it, back in 2008 and then 15, which is acquired. As the CTO of AllCloud, I look after, building a repeatable solution for our customers that help them basically accelerate their journey to the cloud. And when we look at that, it's either foundational pieces like security, but also AI. So a lot of focus on accelerating these days AI adoption. That's key focus for us. And AllCloud is a premier partner, SI partner in the ecosystem, also a strategic partner to AWS. And with this strategic collaboration, we are developing solutions that have a specific go-to-market with AWS that really meant to solve and move the heavy lifting away from our customers and our delivery organization, so they can deliver the value to customer much faster. And a lot of focus is the combination of financial services and AI, unfortunately.
Yep.
So I mean, AllCloud is all about kind of delivering the highest value possible to customers through AI these days, are never compromising security. And I love the conversation before. How many risks are there with those agents, right?
Yeah, and actually that was a great example in the past session, Lahav. It was how much, what's the balance of my savings account, right? Very simple prompt from say a personal banking user, but then all the MCP servers the agent might be connected to, and all the backend systems and other data sources to give it a very simple answer, but there's potential risk across that whole chain.
100%. I couldn't agree more with it. And I think very often people just sometimes underestimate the risk with agent. I think, when you talk about, digitalization that happened, and now with the AI transformation, I think AI is way more wilder. So many things could happen there. And I think this kind of, bring us to how we think of security in the days of AI. I have a nice slide to show that, kind of represent our mindset is we believe, and that's how we work with customers, that security is essentially the enabler for AI. Many developers will think that security is a blocker, right? Is something that, can interfere the work. However, what we learned is that customers who really implement a strong foundation for their environment with a prevention first, that we'll talk about it in a minute, it is really becoming the true enabler for the AI, because all these fears, and are all absolutely true, are mitigated, or at least contained in some way, right? And we are not talking about the content like salt, right? They look at the content of the data, but if your agent is starting to pull data from outside and generate suspicious code and whatever, you want to have a very solid foundation. And we've seen those customers who build this foundation, AI really became a big differentiator for them. It's not just an enabler, not an accelerator. It's a big differentiation in the market because they trust and they can do more.
It's like having house guests over, right? Like, or if you're hosting for a holiday and your extended family comes over. If you spend time to clean the house, get the kitchen in order, put the silverware away before they come over, i.e. you get your security house in order, things are going to tend to go smoother, right? And that foundation is correct us if I'm wrong here, Lahav, but that foundation that we talk about a lot, we talk about sort of like 3 general security control layers. We definitely talk about infrastructure security, the perimeter for one. We talk about data sensitivity, data protection, and identity access. And then the final thing that most people are focused on today, we find, is the AI application itself, which is sort of like what our last conversation was about, like the intent of the agent. What is the output the agent is supposed to produce? But what do you all look at AllCloud there when you're dealing with a client thinking about agent security?
So as I said, we take it from the very beginning. We very often work with very highly regulated customers that are loaded with sensitive data. Yeah. So their first stage is to make sure that their foundation environment is secure. And the typical question I ask customers when I meet them is, how much are you familiar with the data perimeter capabilities? Is the AWS framework that was created by the identity services. Sadly, not enough people, I think, are aware of it. Not enough people are using it. And my recommendation, and to anyone, just go deeper into it, because this is the first time ever you can create a true perimeter. Because if you think of early days when we were building, I know people like me with a gray hair, data centers, and traditionally what it used to be before the cloud was there, we had a proper perimeter, we had a firewall, we could inspect every bit going in and out. It was good. That's it. But
life was so easy, right, Lahav? It was so easy.
Right. Yeah, well, it was very easy. It was one place everything goes to, and that's it. now in the cloud days, there is the control plane and the data plane. Now, the control plane, the whole API space is nothing of your firewall. I mean, you cannot inspect the data. You need something else. And I think this is what data perimeter is all about, right? It builds a true perimeter around your control plane capabilities. And this is how we help financial services organizations to put the foundation. So even an attacker, I mean, it's not about a misconfiguration, it's a prevention layer. If whatever I have, a trust with something outside, I can really enforce at the organization level who can interact with my resources. I mean, what my users, my principals can do outside. So even if your credentials were leaked, they're unused. They cannot be used, right? They're useless outside. So there are many, many ways. And this is how we start the journey with financial services and other regulated, whatever, those customers who really care about security. And I think what it implies for the AI space is that we know there are many risks in the agents and acknowledging it. So the number one thing is to put it in some way of a sandbox or a chamber, right? If you could build a chamber around the agent and you let it do the work inside and you monitor, the integrations with the different MCPs and so on, you would be safer because you would reduce a lot of risks. If there is a supply chain issue, it will likely hit the wall. It will not just go out and do something wild.
You'd rather find it there in that sandbox environment, right, Lahav, before you even get to something exposed to the internet or to your broader environment, even internally, I assume, right?
Right. And the main point is you want to feed the agent with a lot of real, meaningful, very often, very sensitive data. You want to make sure it just stays there. It doesn't leak to somewhere. We trust Bedrock. We know Bedrock will not leak, right? Amazon has all the great evidence why Bedrock is not, a leaking channel. But I said many, many other ways. The MCPs, so many integration happening. So what we do, we place it in a chamber made of data perimeter, all these policies, and together we now let it run and we allow it to do what it should be. And this is a way we help financial services to scale in. What we've seen, financial services are so far, I'm the most impressed by them because they have the biggest appetite to work on AI and to use AI, and it's impressive. And that's why they're demanding all these things. So they're actually, from our point of view, the number one consumers for AI.
I think that's really interesting. And read it back to something you said when at the start, Lahav, is you mentioned, security being the enabler, and that's something from a cultural perspective that we see in a lot of really successful companies who innovate but that have very high security standards, is that actually they use security as an enabler. So they make security either the friction-free or the frictionless option or the easy button, whichever the terminology is you use, but they always make sure that their customers, their users, their application owners can make the right choice, and they're not forced into, do we want to do this that might cause a security risk because it's easier? And that's a key enabling strategy, I think, when you're dealing with fast-paced innovation like agents and AI.
Absolutely. I think, you talk about enabling, and I agree with it 100%, because, as we want to be, by providing these strong security capabilities, we want to be an enabler. Now, we all know that the more you kind of, harden the environment and now the guardrails, the agility is impacted, and there are a lot of kind of, interference and frustration happening, right? This is, I think everyone will agree with it, that's the challenge with the interference between, agility and security. So by the way, what we did to overcome it, because we want security as an enabler, not as a disruption. So what we did is we created a whole set of CDK constructs and Terraform template, which are guardrail aware, meaning these things are meant to be deployed within this worlded garden environment. So when you use this library of templates or constructs, it does know it lives in a closed environment. And when you deploy the agent to agent core, it won't just throw it outside of VPC. It will force it to be inside of VPC. It will make sure everything lands within your perimeter, right? I started by saying we have to build a perimeter. Now we have to make sure all the resources that we deploy are within it. But on the other hand, we don't want this interference with the developers or builders. Now, how you educate them not to make mistakes? I mean, you either do it through documentation, training. I think both are meant to fail. What you need to do it kind of in an automatic way, that the template which they use, the golden path that they deploy with, already know all these kind of things, and we propagate those security guardrails into the template. I think this is where the magic happens. And at the end of the day, we want to accelerate AI adoption. So adding, the security guardrails with the enabling of the builders to be, with very little of interference and the smoothness, this is where the speed happens.
Yeah, reduce that friction for those developers, right, Lahav? They've got a lot of pressure to go develop these agentic systems for their companies. And hey, so do we all in different companies, right? We've got the pressure because there's demand, and the output of these systems is very valuable to people. And so there's speed and there's inertia behind that. And there's actually a great question from Jim again here about, I think he's asking the difference for, if we're talking about like access controls, what's the difference between, say, a traditional application access controls and, say, maybe an agentic based system access controls, maybe human versus machine? I'm sure you can probably take that one there, Lahav.
I love the question for a reason. The way we build our AI orchestration is, we all start from a least privileges approach, right? That's everybody will acknowledge. But I don't think it's enough. The way we build the agents, we consider them as a no privileges approach. What does it mean? When we run an agent and we need to pass data to the agent, and right, there will be multiple agents running in parallel. So we do not want to give the agent access, let's say, to the S3 bucket, because there are multiple pieces of data sitting there, and then multiple agents running in parallel on the same job, right, on the same purpose. So what do we do with orchestration? Agents has no privileges, just no. What do we do? When we instantiate the job, when we invoke the agent, we also pass it signed URLs for the specific data object, sitting in a specific bucket that is well protected, and it's a short-living access to that particular agent. So the pattern of the access control for the agent is the agent has access only to the very specific data it needs to read or write, nothing else. So imagine you have 2 parallel agents or 1,000 parallel agents. None of them has access to the same data that the other has. And I think this is, you ask about, what is the, access control pattern. I think it's short-living on the need basis only. No privileges. I think that's the way to go. That's how we build it. And it's just helping us a lot with this kind of messy thing of, okay, whatever, over privileges. Okay, no privileges is the easiest way to do less privileges, right? You don't need to deal with extra privileges if there are no privileges. So that's literally, that's how we think, that's how we work. And it's been showing us, very helpful. There need to be a little layer of, orchestration to pass these, create these signed URLs. But at the end of the day, it solves a huge problem. I don't need to deal with its privileges. What are the privileges? No privileges.
Yeah.
I think that's really good in terms of, if you look back at things like, data access and privileged users as well, one of the main tenets around that is no standing privileges. Because if you have standing privileges, one, they're probably going to be over permissive, but also they get forgotten about. And in a world where we're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of agents and new ones being created and old ones being given new permissions or new roles or doing stuff they weren't intended to, if you have a stack of, of permanent permissions there, you're going to have to manage that. And that's something that's we generally do a a poor job in security at managing access and permissions in the traditional world. And I'm kind of I'm talking about traditional world now pre-AI and pre-agents, whereas before it was, on-prem. So we've advanced the level, but the complexity and the speed has increased.
Very, very true. Very true. And hey, Lahav, I'm going back to something you mentioned in one of your talk tracks here, which was like prevention first. So I picked up there's no privilege is the best kind of least privilege. And then you mentioned the way you sort of start working with a client is a prevention first assessment or mindset. I'm curious what that actually means in practice. Like how do you go and how do you put that into the real world?
So the concept behind a prevention first is putting the perimeter. I know it sounds a little bit old fashioned, but it did work for very long, and I think it's still working, right? I mean, the prevention first is we are not waiting for the misconfiguration to happen. We are putting the guardrails in advance. I mean, everybody familiar with SCP, service control policies, and resource control policies, and the VPC endpoint policies, right? Everybody familiar with them. Now, with them, you can build a really strong boundaries around your workloads, whether it could be the organization or the OU or even an account. By putting these prevention guardrails, which are, I think, the hardest you can do on AWS, even if somebody is making mistakes on over-permissive security groups, or wrong trust policies between, it will just not work. The whole idea that we look at is, again, going back to the traditional days, if I could lock my workload in a closed environment, I would just feel safer. I know I'm just mitigating lots of possibilities from happening and preventing them in advance by putting this. And I think that's why I feel my mission is to educate people to leverage data perimeter. This is how we create the prevention first, because it's a layer that comes before the other IAM roles and policies and so on. And I think it's our mission to build a safer cloud, and just by leveraging it, I think it's such a fundamental thing. Everybody should learn it. Everybody should understand it. And it saves a lot of risk and danger from running in a cloud. And then it becomes the enabler, right? We talked about it at the very beginning. We want to be enablers for customers to do as much as they can on the cloud, and it all starts from trust. If they trust the platform, if they have the right foundation, they'll trust it, they'll do it, they'll let it happen. Same thing with AI. That's why, again, we think security is the true enabler for AI, and AI is everywhere today.
Very, very well said, Lahav. Yeah. And I don't know if you're seeing this as well too, but you said the word, trusting where you're building, where you're running your workload or your AI application in this particular case. But I'm seeing a lot more people out there doing scrappy builds that turn into production builds that would have normally been sort of a procure off-the-shelf software 6-12 months ago. They're more into the idea of, can I make the agent build an agent to write some code to do a thing for me instead of buying off-the-shelf software? So this custom-made agentic solutions that are popping up everywhere from companies that used to just buy off-the-shelf tools, now doing it themselves. How does that? Do you see that same trend from all the clients you have, especially in like the regulated industries?
100%. It is so interesting to see. The evolution is happening because of the existence of AI, because of the speed we can generate and create meaningful applications. We see a lot of customers, at least now experimenting a lot about, okay, let's try build this application rather than buying it, because the speed is enormous, right? You can do things so quick. I think the same thing happening with agents. There are lots of agents and capabilities out there. I believe, and that's what we see with customers, they build most of them for a couple of reasons. Every agent is a little different. The tooling are really, really good today. And you want to standardize. If you end up buying hundreds of different, off-the-shelf buy technologies, how you now manage the cost of it, the standardization of it, everything is a little different.
Yeah.
What we see customers adopting a golden path to build their AI agents. They decide that they use a certain, agent framework, environments, agent core as an example, right? With the entire ecosystem around that, right? The gateway, the identities, with the policies, it's a whole ecosystem. We see customers making a decision, an opinionated approach, and standardizing. And I see customers building a lot more today than a year ago. I think because simply it's possible. It's possible, and it's not a big overhead. And once they build this kind of golden path and the blueprints, then it's flying. And I think that's where things will go to.
I'm glad you're seeing the same thing out there, Lahav. And you said you worked a lot with the regulated industries, and Rob being in Europe there, compliance comes to mind. And we get into a lot of conversations with people about, sometimes if it's the CISO's office, they're talking hardcore like application security controls. Other times, if it's the risk officer or the risk team, they're talking about just audit evidence and an upcoming audit that's happening for a regulation that they have to go prove that they're compliant with, but it's a point-in-time compliance check. How do you balance those two when you advise a client? The security controls from the security team versus the evidence for an audit that comes down. They're two related things, but I'm curious, with AllCloud here, you probably experienced this more than anybody out there.
We do. And I'll tell you how we look at this situation, right? Very often I meet customers and they share that they want to meet a certain compliance standard. But the way we look at, building a secure and a protected environment is actually from an attacker point of view. The auditor the compliance auditor is very important, but in some way it's a secondary objective. The number one objective is to really prevent or protect the environment from the attacker, and then of course satisfy the auditor. So our motto is to think like attackers and to prevent from the attackers to make their way to our data and get to what they want. And it's at the end of the day, the outcome of it is a satisfied auditor, right? So this is kind of a big mindset shift. Too many times, again, people think of the compliance, but not at the real security controls objectives and how they do and what are the possibilities. As you said, an audit happens once in a while, but security is every second, right? You build something, a minute after it will change. So the audit evidence is right for a minute ago, not for now. So everything should start from the attacker point of view, and I think of the bad actor and not the auditor. I think that's the main way you look at this.
That's really important because particularly in highly regulated industry where the regulations carry potential fines. Those fines are often big enough to be board level discussions and they go on the risk register. You start to look at compliance as the biggest threat, but compliance isn't necessarily security. So I think it's really, really good to look at it from a security perspective first, and then look at how it addresses the regulatory part. But it's a difficult challenge sometimes to where do you put those resources? So, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, but at the end of the day, I think when we bake it all together, a good prevention, end up with a very happy auditor and a very complete compliance. The end of the day, the compliance meant to make sure we are protected.
Yep.
But we should never sacrifice the real protection because we focus on the audit. I think that's a big takeaway, especially when you have real sensitive data. And luckily, these are the customers we work with. They challenge us to really protect and to satisfy the auditor.
Well said. Well, that's great advice, Lahav. We're just about out of time, but before we let you go, we would love, on behalf of the audience, to know what is your favorite snack for a road trip?
Oh, the fruit candies are my lovely one. I mean, especially that my daughter, I mean, always has some in the backpack. That's the thing, yeah.
Stealing from the daughter, the fruit candies. I love it, Lahav.
Awesome.
She's taking good care of me. I mean, that's the thing. That's my pleasure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Lahav
Love
from
it.
AllCloud, thank you for joining us. Folks, we'll be back every other week, every other Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific. Until next time, see you all. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.